Hi, everyone. It's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And I'm happy to have with us today David Oliver.
Hello. So happy to be here.
Hi. Great to have you here. And, let me start out with just introducing yourself to our viewers. Give a little bit of background about who you are.
Sure. My name is David Oliver. I am an entertainment and wellness reporter at USA Today. I live in Washington, D.C., and I cover primarily stories related to entertainment and wellness about diversity and inclusion. So making sure that we're highlighting underrepresented groups with stories specifically about these communities, but also just making sure that our stories are sourced with people from underrepresented communities, even if the story isn't directly about them.
Certainly. And, one of your most recent articles, and, one of the reasons we also reached out to you was diving into the Black queer stories that we're seeing right now on, TV, in media, in music, from Lil Nas X to the stories in sex education to, Lena Waithe, that story in Master of None. What was it, that really made you want to explore this, look into it a little bit deeper, and look at how it is shaping, how the media landscape is being shaped by these stories right now?
Sure. I think it's a number of things. I think I'm always trying to be cognizant of, sort of things that we're seeing in the zeitgeist that are speaking to a moment. And it just felt like, I mean, Lil Nas X has been constantly changing the game for a long time now.
Mhm.
So he was sort of from the get-go somebody that I've been really, paying attention to and sort of watching his journey and just how comfortable he is with his sexuality and like sharing that, whether it's through live performances or on like or in his music videos, like everything is just a huge game changer. And then it was really when I was watching this latest season of Sex Education where there were multiple queer Black love stories happening on screen, which felt so rare, unfortunately. And at first, I wasn't sure if that was my own type of blind spot that I hadn't seen, but kind of in speaking with experts, no, it's still like there is a dearth of these stories on screen. There's more than I think get talked about, but still not enough. So the stories in sex education were specifically about one character, Eric. He's in a relationship with a white man, but he ends up going to Nigeria.
Nigeria,
Sort of
exactly.
yes.
Now, when I watched that scene, I will say there was nothing like watching that scene for me because I'm gay, I'm also Black, and I'm also not from America. I'm from Jamaica originally. And so I identified with Eric in that way because, that character, we're both from places where, homophobia is unfortunately a part of the culture. And I say that because here where it's like, okay, homophobia is bad, this is right, this is wrong, it's different coming from some place like that because it's so ingrained in the culture. It's not really based on like a value judgment of something of that. It's really just based in the culture, and that is what, and it takes so much to change that. It takes so much to change that. And there's some of us out there who are trying their best, but there was nothing like stepping into a gay Black space that you can also celebrate your culture within. And that was something that was so beautiful to see Eric experience, going back, to his roots and still being able to be his full self, his free self with people that look like him, with people that share his culture. And, all sides of himself are able to live in that space and in that moment. That's something so beautiful. It literally blew me away. Literally blew me away.
Exactly. Yeah, I know when I saw that again, it felt so rare to see that type of thing. So I talked to the showrunner of the series who talked about how they were able to do that so effectively, and it
Yeah.
involved including like a Black queer, a British and Nigerian person in their writers' room to help
Yes.
tell that story most effectively. Um, And I feel like that's really what made this so, you know, important and impactful, was that's how this stuff happens, is by including people both behind the scenes and in front of the camera who can work together to create a really impactful story. So I'm so happy to hear that it resonated with
Oh,
you. I think it's,
certainly.
from what I've seen, it seems to resonate with a ton of people. And just, I know, I just myself watching it, it felt so incredible to see that type of thing on screen, even though in the context of the show, you know, there's, spoiler alert, there's something that Eric does that sort of
Yes.
jeopardizes his relationship back home. It
Yes.
wasn't, it's more complicated than what I think a
Very
traditional,
that, very
it's
that.
complicated.
Because,
Yeah,
while I was watching it, I was like, girl, I get it. Live in your moment, baby. It's just what it is. You're just in this space. You feel it. And because I felt it when he walked into that room, there was something that passed over his face. And you saw it, and I felt it because I've experienced that before. Being in Jamaica, I can feel my full Jamaican fantasy, but I can't feel my full queer fantasy unless I'm here, and I can do that. But then, even within that space, I can't have both. And to have both is something that you just cannot put a price on. And so even though whatever happened in that moment happened in that moment, I give him a pass for it, because I get how that moment can be. There's something really important sex education also touched on, and it was introducing Carl, the new non-binary character, and seeing that relationship play out with, a cis hetero man, and seeing how their relationship, grew. And something I thought, spoiler alert, I thought, by the end they were going to get together, was going to do this. But the way how the story turned out and what Cal said, it's something I never actually really thought about as a cis person myself. It's not something I actually really thought about. And the way how Cal, what's head boy's name again? I forget his name.
Jackson.
Jackson. There we go. The way how he might feel a little bit uncomfortable with the idea that his relationship would be a queer relationship. And I'm so interested to see how they work through that next season and where that goes, because that's really interesting. Something I've never seen play out as well, on screen.
For sure. I also had never seen that and was amazed and thought, oh my God, that's so true. It's like, if in theory he was in that relationship with Cal, that would mean he was in a queer relationship.
Yes.
And it totally, and this character has queer parents, like he has two moms. And I thought that was so interesting. It's like, so it's not, so so he knows, he's so exposed to that at home. But then when it came to like a relationship where he himself could be or thought about being queer, it totally changed the game for him. I thought I loved those dynamics. But yeah, again, it spoke to kind of how well, I think the writer's room spoke to a bunch of, they worked with non-binary consultants for, I believe, this storyline, and then also with another storyline about binding with a couple different non-binary characters on screen as well. And I think, again, it goes to show how behind the scenes, when you have the people writing these stories, you're going to get this authenticity. And the more that we can see these types of stories, the less like groundbreaking they'll be. They'll just kind of be normal, which I think is
certainly.
Yeah, which is the goal. I think.
Well, the thing is, I will say, for at least the time being, for the very close future, the more there's a Black queer representation, there will always be something groundbreaking, because there are many things that, and many different representations of Black queer love that we haven't seen on screen yet. For example, Lil Nas X and his dancer kissing on screen, that was giving. We saw Brady and Christina do that, and Madonna do that years ago. They already gave the girls that moment then. But I'm not even sure if any of them identify as queer. It was a queer moment. I think some of them may. I'm not assuming, but I don't think generally that's what they're giving. But Lil Nas X, a queer Black man kissing another Black man on stage, I mean, that's groundbreaking. It is what it is.
It is so groundbreaking
moment. And so for many people, that type of no one has ever seen that before. What do you think that means for queer stories in queer stories in media in the future moving forward, do you expect to see much more of, these type of stories coming out and, being tackled and talked about and told about in even more nuanced ways?
I certainly hope so. I think that we're seeing there's so much kind of pouring of like a lot of organizations and companies are all vowing to be more inclusive and to be kind of adding to the pipeline, like queer creators, Black creators, other creators of color, trying to help create the next generation of storytellers and actors and everything. So I think in theory it could be happening, but I think it still speaks to the fact that people still need to keep fighting for more representation, because these things just, it's a lot of one step forward, two steps back. So I think it's important for people to keep fighting for their stories to be told. I think that in terms of nuance, I think that even with sex education is a perfect example. The stories are not so cut and dry. They're parts of them are sad, parts of them are very uplifting. I think that it's like, if we can wrestle with the fact that some stories can be both traumatic and joyful, and then sort of live in that complicated space. Like, I mean, like the most recent season of Master of None, like was not like a happy story, but it's not. But the fact that that can exist on screen the way that it did is still a win in itself. Like that hasn't happened before between like, two Black lesbians on screen. Like that doesn't happen. So it
does not.
So I think it's sort of like willing to make room and space. And also I think it's a complicated thing too, because it's like not just because a story is created by, people who are underrepresented, the story itself and the end product might not be fantastic, but it's hard to like, you want to like hold things up as like, oh my God, this is such a great thing, this happened, but like they're not always going to be great. So my hope is that
that's the truth though. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And the fact is there's a lot of trauma that Black queer people go through. And so when telling those stories, a lot of that will come out. The joy will be there, of course, but the trauma will also be there. And those stories also deserve to be told.
For sure. And I guess my hope is that we can all look at these stories and then can talk about them and critique them and not, feel like we need to vilify each other for having different opinions. I think it's actually really good if a story makes you think a lot differently and have different opinions and all of these things. So I think that I'm looking forward to more of that going forward as these stories become more commonplace, that we can have more discussions that are more meaningful about the art itself, as opposed to just like the fact that it like, did XYZ thing for these different communities. But I still think we're far away from that. So it's important to be highlighting. I mean, I wish we weren't. Like, I wish that my job didn't have to exist, but it kind of does at this point.
Well, so. And it does, and it does. So, well, how can people follow you, David? Follow you, keep up with you, and, always getting the new USA Today article that you're going to be putting out?
Generally my Twitter account, it's just DOliver8 is the best spot. And if you want to reach me for any story ideas or have any questions, it's just DOliver@usatoday.com. But yeah, always reach out with anything. I always love hearing from people. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. You can go ahead and check out David's article, How Lil Nas X, Lena, Waithe, and Sex Education Are Championing Black Queer Love Stories, right now on USA Today. David, thank you so much for joining me. It has been such a pleasure. And, thanks for what you're doing, writing stories, looking into all the queer stories that are out there that are coming out. Thanks so much for what you're doing as well. And thanks so much for being here with me.
Right. Likewise. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Certainly. And to our viewers, thank you all for watching. Bye, everyone. See you.